Hi everyone, Morgie Roy here again. I just wanted to talk about some of my favorite homebrew D&D rules because D&D has a great rule set. It's got its ups and downs. It's not perfect, but it is also very easy to modify. The game is particularly balanced in some ways, and thus, if you change something or add homebrew to something, it's not going to ruin the game. Some games are quite a bit more balanced, and if you start adding random rules here and there, it's not going to be able to run as smoothly. D&D 5e, specifically, is the one that I'm talking about. And there's lots of homebrew rules out there that I really enjoy. This is one that almost everyone uses, but not a lot of people know that it's actually a homebrew rule. It is critical failure and critical success with a nat 1 and a nat 20. At least in D&D 5e, that isn't specifically in the rules. It's just something that so many people homebrew that becomes basically something that everybody thinks works. But for attacks, in the original rules, it means that you automatically hit or automatically miss with a nat 20 and a nat 1. But for skill checks, a nat 1 and a nat 20 doesn't mean anything in the actual rules. But a lot of people rule it that you're going to succeed with a nat 20 and you're going to fail with a nat 1, no matter what new modifiers you have with it. So we'll get that one out of the way first, because that's one that's so common that people think it's an actual rule, but it's not. I use it and everybody I've played with uses it. Anyway, the second rule that I really like using is I do inspiration in my games that I run, and I used to try and reward it for good RP. And that worked for a bit, but I have a couple of quieter players in my game, and I find that some people were getting inspiration quite a bit more than other people. And I kind of decided that wasn't very fair. And sometimes I personally would get so invested in a scene, I would forget to award inspiration for something that should have been awarded. So what I started doing, and this is for my game, is that my players get inspiration if they roll a nat 20 or a nat 1, or if they get hit with a critical hit from an enemy. So that seems to work pretty good for my group, and it stops me from forgetting to award inspiration all the time. What my other group does is they go by Pathfinder rules, and our DM gives us a re-roll inspiration at the beginning of every session. So we always have inspiration of the session, but we don't gain inspiration throughout the session. So those are two ways that I've seen inspiration run, and it seems to work a lot better than the way I was doing it before, where it was a little uneven, and characters who RP less weren't really getting a fair shot at inspiration. Another very common rule in D&D 5e is drinking a potion is supposed to be an action, but a lot of people rule it as a bonus action. And some people say this rule is broken, but it all depends on how many potions you give your group, how many healers there are in your group, and how strong your battles are. So I think it's more of if you want to institute that rule as a DM, you just have to make sure the balance is there. And balance in D&D 5e is kind of broken anyway. So you're going to struggle with that, and that's okay. It encourages your players to use potions more. And a lot of classes in D&D don't have a use for their bonus action every turn. So it gives them something to do with it. So that's another one that's very common and that I've seen in many things, including Critical Role. This is less of a homebrew rule, but just something fun that I've seen in one-shots in particularly, is that there's a lot of feats in D&D, and not all feats get a chance to be used. When my group, the group I play in, runs one-shots, they let players pick a bonus feat for the one-shot. And it's kind of fun because it lets people experiment with feats that they normally wouldn't do in like a full campaign, because you don't know if it's going to be useful or never come up or whatever. And this lets you use it more often. So it's kind of a fun little thing that I've seen. I don't know if that counts as a homebrew rule or it's just something fun we do, but I like it. This is another thing I've come up with. This is more of a thing I designed myself, but my personal feeling is that I don't really like how training for proficiencies is done in D&D 5e. So the official rule for training with a set of tools or a skill is that you have to find an instructor that's willing to teach you. The GM determines how long it takes and whether one or more ability checks are required, and the training lasts for 250 days and costs 1 gold piece per day. And after you spend the requisite amount of time and money, you learn the new language or gain proficiency with the new tool. Now, it does say that the DM has some kind of control over that, and I decided to make an entirely different system that seems to work for my group, and they seem to like it. So what we do is every day where they have some downtime, because it does take a little bit of time to train, is that if they want to learn a new skill, I also allow them to learn cantrips. Please don't bite my head off. This is our game. It's just, I'm not a super strict DM. They can either train a new skill to get proficiency in. They can train in learning a cantrip, or they can train in learning a tool. And they can only train one per day. And what they do is every day they roll a d20, and a 0 to 9 is 1 point. A 10 to 15 is 2 points. A 15 to 20 is 3 points. Over 20 is 4 points. And a nat 20 is 5 points. And I keep a record of it. I have a little Excel spreadsheet that I use for it. And once they get up to 100, which takes a while, they are able to have that proficiency / tool training / cantrip. And they have to use the skill that would affect that the most. And sometimes I have to make a judgment call about what skill that would be. And then they can RP how they're practicing that. And it's allowed my players to learn some things wouldn't have been able to train or have access to. And it's just kind of a fun way. And it might seem a little overly easy, but I think 250 days and 1 gold piece per day is a little strict when most campaigns that I've seen and played in are over the course of a few months. Maybe a year, rarely, especially if you time jump in there. So I think the D&D 5e rules are a little strict for that, and I wanted to provide a different system to show that off. And so that's a homebrew rule that I put. That's a training rule, proficiency, magic training rule. So that's my personal thing. I created that, and my players seem to really enjoy it, and it's encouraged them to have something to do with their downtime. They just like learning new skills, and I don't find my players are level 11 now in my game, and I don't find it breaking the game at all. The rogue has expertise now, so they're good at everything anyway. So the proficiency bonus isn't really affecting much there anyway. But that's just me. That is my ruling systems for training. But I like it, and it seems to work good for my group, and I'm probably going to implement it for future things. That's my personal system. That's one that I created, and I really like it. Okay. One rule that I haven't seen play out in any of my campaigns that I've been a player or a DM for, that I would like to implement sometime, because it does sound very fun, is hidden death saves. And that's where you roll your death saves, but you don't announce what it is. You just keep track of your death saves. Or the DM rolls them for you. Hidden death saves are a cool way to add a little bit more drama. Because the way D&D 5e right now is if you're in a really hard battle, you're trying to maintain your resources, and you get very game-minded about it, where you're like, they rolled a death save and they passed or failed. So that means I have at least 2 more, possibly 3 more rolls before they're gonna die. And so I don't need to heal them right now. I can do damage on this round. And that's great. It's not very fun for the other person, who is probably hoping that you'll revive them so they can get back into the fight. So it makes it so that you don't have that metagame knowledge of how close that person is to death. So that's a cool one. I haven't seen it implemented, but I know my GM has talked about it and how interesting it is. So it's something that we probably will implement at some point in the future, but haven't seen it in practice yet, but it does seem very cool. And going along with the hidden death saves, another popular homebrew rule that I've seen, but hasn't been implemented in my games, but one that my GM has discussed, is having resurrection be a little bit more of a challenging thing to accomplish. If you've seen any Critical Role, you know that this is something that Matt Mercer implements in his game, where you go down and your character dies, the other characters have to roll a skill check in order to revive you from death. And for Revivify, and for any other death things, you have a hidden number that increases, and that's the amount that has to be rolled above. Now, obviously, my personal thing, for the really high level abilities like Resurrection and True Resurrection, where it's incredibly expensive to revive someone, I would probably rule that those ones would work automatically, because that is a big resource use. That is one, again, that you have to have a group that you feel very comfortable with and you trust your DM a lot, because a player's character is very important to them. So depending on how your group treats death, that may not be a rule that is for everyone. So just keep that in mind. But that is also one that I know is very popular and that we've discussed using in my campaigns. Last one, I don't know why so many of these rules are about dying and death, but you know, it's the drama. D&D players love the drama. We love drama. But the other one that people use quite a bit, and if you've heard anything about Daggerheart, you know that Daggerheart has this option as well, is that if your character does die, they are allowed to have a final stand where they're able to do a very powerful attack to the bad guy before they die. That is, again, a personal preference. It depends on the kind of game you want to run. It adds to the drama quite a bit, and it does make it so that your character doesn't feel like they are dying in vain, or they just, they didn't have a heroic death, or however you want to view it. But it is an option for a lot of people. And it's so much of an option that Daggerheart has it in its actual core rules, if you have looked into that. So it's a fun one. But anyway, those are some of the homebrew rules that I really enjoy, and most have seen in most of my games. And if you have any other homebrew rules that you like, that you would like to see implemented in your games, or that you have played with and enjoyed using, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I hope you're having a great day. If you're not having a great day, I hope your bad day is over with soon. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye!